Even though I'm a reseller myself, I've been seeing a lot of things online that I just can't defend. Today, this video is unethical scalper tactics, but it gets more and more extreme. 99% of the things on this list will involve in-store releases, and that's partly why I don't participate in these shenanigans, because I don't want to deal with more or less everything that I'm talking about in this video. Number one, we have bribing. This is outright saying to the employee, hey, increase my limit and I'll give you some money. You gotta be a little bit smarter than that. There is a fine line between making connections and bribing. From what I've heard, sometimes if you meet with a vendor very frequently, or you're in a store very frequently and you get to know the staff there, maybe give them gift cards, or I don't know, buy them lunch or something like that. In my opinion, that's kind of just like bribing with extra steps. But at least if you do it that way, you actually get to build a genuine connection with some of the staff there. And this is pretty low on the list because ultimately anybody can do this. Number two is putting on a disguise. I actually did this in the past before. And the way this would work is you would go online, you would have a one quantity limit. So you know, you get your item, you get out of the store, and then you put on a different outfit and then you go back online again. Back during the PS5 days, this was especially prevalent when you have a bunch of pickup orders, but you don't know if like the manager or whatever is gonna make a big fuss about one person picking up multiple items. So go in your car, put on like sunglasses, put on a fake accent, wait maybe 30 minutes to an hour or something, and then go back in there and pick up what you gotta pick up. Not too bad. Again, this is something that anyone can do. We go on to number three, backdooring. This is a lot more prevalent with sneakers, although I do know that this happens with Pokemon cards and basically anything else really, is when employees hold items for their friends or maybe even just for themselves. I don't think this is too bad because let's be real, man. If you had a plug, or you had, let's say your best friend works at a Target or something, I think it would make less sense not to take advantage of this connection that you have. Yes, it absolutely sucks that it reduces the amount of total allocation of the stock that's supposed to be meant for public purchasing. I mean, anyone would do this, realistically. As with everything on this list, there can be a point where you can take it too far. And one of the main examples that pop up in my head is the initial drop for the Trophy Room Jordan 1s, a highly anticipated sneaker. And when it finally released, it was suspected that around 95 to 98% of the entirety of the stock was backdoored by the owner of the sneaker store. So it wasn't a situation where he's like, oh, let me give some to my friends and family. He just straight up sold for resale price, allowing him to make millions and millions of dollars in the process. Making millions of dollars, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I feel like this was taking it way too far. Fourth on the list is line holding with a chair. Now, this is somewhat of a hotly debated topic. If you decide to camp out overnight, go online. Some people would put a chair there and have that chair hold their place in line while they go back to their car, do whatever. In my personal opinion, I don't think that should be allowed. If you leave your place in line, that's it, you're giving up your place in line. The whole point of showing up early before the next person is because you gotta suffer, man. I'm not exactly sure if suffer is the correct word for this. The idea behind it is you're trading off your time and comfort for a better chance at securing the product. If you're just relaxing in your car, then in many ways that just kind of defeats the purpose of it. It is what it is. Number 5 on the list is hiding inventory in order to bypass quantity limit. Let's say you show up to Target, you have a 2 quantity limit per person. Instead of you taking your 2 and then checking that out, instead, let's say you take 6. You take 6 and then the 4 you hide somewhere in the store, like behind other products or maybe inside of the shelves. And then you get your 2, you check out as you normally would, but maybe either the next day or maybe a few hours on that same day, you come back, you go back to your stash, and then you get another 2 out of your stash. Check that out. You're basically bypassing the intended quantity limit. At number 6, we have bringing all of your friends and your entire bloodline to the line. It's really common to bring friends and maybe some of your immediate family members or cousins or whatever, maybe your parents, some siblings, because you know, you want to try and get as many Pokemon cards or whatever it is you're buying, as many as possible. That's the whole point of bringing more people over, so that you can bypass the quantity limits. However, some people just take it way too freaking far. Some of these lines, I see people's entire family and great grandma in a wheelchair trying to hit Pokemon cards for you. Like, bro, what is that? Like, let her rest. She doesn't have much time left in the world. You're gonna have a poor 70-year-old lady fighting with unemployed men trying to get Pokemon cards. It's just, that's too much. Too much, in my opinion. Number 7 would be lying to customers is kind of just scummy, you know? Let's say you show up early in the morning and then you're the 6th person in line, and then the person in front of you, they say, oh yeah, they only have 5 in stock, so you might as well leave the line. And that's so that they can get more for themselves, obviously. Number 8 would be unplugging Pokemon Center vending machines to bypass the limit. These vending machines are pretty controversial because the first person who gets there can realistically take as much stock as they want to. I think that's more so to do with the system of vending machines and not being able to properly enforce a quantity limit. Believe it or not, I'm actually in favor of quantity limits. As to how you get around it, I think it's fine too. However, when it comes to these vending machines, I feel like it's just way too easy to just empty these out if you're the absolute first person in line. Number 9 through number 12 involves line skipping. Now, there's many ways to skip the line. However, in the spirit of this video, we're gonna go from the least immoral to the most immoral. Either way, if you're skipping the line, that's immoral already to begin with. If you show up later than somebody else, there is no situation where you would somehow end up being in front of that somebody else who showed up before you. So the first way of skipping the line would be through reorganization. So let's say this is the line, these little circles are people lining up, and then the entrance is over here. Let's say the line starts here for whatever reason, and then you would have a staff member saying, okay, everyone here, I need you guys to make a single line file up until the entrance. Now, since this is kind of messy to begin with, what some people would do is use this reorganization to try and get ahead of the line. So obviously some people are gonna walk faster or slower, but trying to get a single file line from something that's messy can cause a lot of problems. And I first-handedly experienced this, where after the reorganization, some people who are way behind me somehow end up way in front of me. Like, super annoying, but people get away with it. The next way to skip the line is causing chaos. And this is what I'm talking about. So let's say these people have been here for 12 hours, right? They're waiting online, they're camping out, and then you have someone who comes in after the 14th hour and decides to form his own line on the other side of the entrance. And then some other people will end up waiting on this line. But at this point, it's completely unfair because this person who showed up way later ended up being second in line, kind of, even though the people back here who's following the rules might not even be able to touch the item anymore because we have more people lining up over here. And by the time the worker, staff member, or whatever gets to the store, they don't know what's going on. They only have people's word to go off of. And let's say this guy decides to bring some of his buddies. His buddies can obviously just be like, oh yeah, we were in line first. Like, this sucks. Sometimes you'd even have people forming lines in the front like this, and then they would have lines over here. And before you know it, this entire section is filled with people. And it's just absolute chaos. Next way some people skip lines is just by not giving a fuck and just skipping people. Like, maybe they would have a friend in the front of the line. Someone who shows up super late just walks up to their friend and skips everyone else as if they were there to begin with. Sometimes they don't even care if they don't know anyone. I have seen instances where some people pull off just magic tricks where I can see who's in the front of the line. I've been there for a while. I turn around, I look back, next thing you know, there's some complete stranger there that I've never seen before who literally seemed as if they just popped out of the floor and everyone's just like cool with it. Not really. People aren't cool with it, but it's just not worth, you know, getting into fights over who's first in line. And I have seen situations where people aren't cool with it. We're yelling at the person in the front who clearly cut everyone else, and then that person is just being ignorant, like, oh yeah, I was here the whole time. And then whoever's working at the store, they just let them have it, let them have that place in line. Now on number 12, this number 12 is the exact reason why I stopped doing in-store releases. This is line holding with your chair for multiple people. I remember being on the line for some Jordan 1s. I think I got there at around 4 or 5 a.m. I don't remember. But what I do remember is I think I might have been like the 10th or 11th person in line, but I was fairly confident that I got there early enough to be able to touch the item. Of course, towards the front, you had people with their chairs and everything like that. Was waiting there for hours and hours and hours. And then 5 minutes before the release, all of the cars parked around the block, car, and just like a ton of people walking out of their cars. And next thing you know, I'm like the 50th in line and I have absolutely no chance at all. Each chair in line was holding a spot between 4 to 7 people. And that was a point where I'm like, fuck this, I'm never doing this again. Even in the best case scenario where I do manage to get a pair of sneakers, I only walk away with one when I could have just been chilling at my house, botting this shit, hanging out with the boys on Discord, and be able to get multiple. That was a turning point for me. But instead, what I decided to do was wake up stupid early, wait in the freezing cold, harsh winter of New York, and take an L to these line skippers. Never again. If you're liking this video so far, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. It's 2 clicks, and if you do, I'll love you forever. Back to the video. Number 13 on this list is reselling fakes. I made an entire video about this, but basically, if you look up reselling on any social media platform right now, around 80% of search results on the first page is gonna involve reselling fakes, like reselling fake AirPods, reselling fake spider hoodies or whatever, fake denim tears. And yeah, this has been going on for a very long time, but what surprises me the most is the fact that they're just showing off these illegal activities as if it was just a side hustle or as if they're legitimate entrepreneurial businesses. Like, you're just scamming people. And yes, you can get arrested reselling fakes. It's happened. Do not fuck your life over trying to do this. Number 14 is paying homeless people to stand in line for you. Unless you're treating them like absolute shit, I don't think this is that immoral, but I do think this is very extreme. It would also depend on your profit margins, because I don't think it would really be that worth it unless you're reselling an item with at least, I don't know, 80 to 150 plus profit margins per item. But hey, if they agree to it, you agree to it, you're giving them food or whatever, fine. But this is a bit more on the extreme end. Okay, we are at number 15 now. Remember how I said 99% of these is going to deal with in-store stuff? This is the 1% where it's botting and it's illegal. Botting event tickets and stuff like that in America, that's illegal. However, if you bought Pokemon cards, sneakers, or literally anything else, it's fair game. It's perfectly legal. Except for when it's not. Whenever you try and go for online releases, one of the release procedures that's very popular is some sort of queuing system where you would sit in a queue and then you pray to God that you pass the queue before the item sells out. Very common. There was this one bot that was able to bypass the queue for a certain website. I'm not going to say any names at all because none of this is confirmed, but highly likely. This bot was able to skip the queue. They had some sort of queue bypass or something. And honestly, it's fairly common. We would see bypasses and stuff like this all the time. So everyone was thinking, oh, this is just like another one of those bypasses. It wasn't. One day, the developer of this bot kind of just disappeared. Now, why would that happen? You own a bot that everyone's happy with, that's reselling for thousands of dollars. Why would you just kind of disappear? And a lot of people were speculating that his bypass wasn't really that legal. You see, when you try and find a bypass for a queue, usually this would involve doing a certain set of actions to be able to get around that queue. You can kind of think of this like a cheat code or like a glitch or a bug. If you think about speed running, it's very common to see speed runners exploiting all sorts of bugs and glitches and stuff, and it's still legit. However, a speedrunner is no longer legit when they literally hack the game. And a lot of people were speculating this is exactly what happened with this specific bot, was that this bot either had administrator credentials to the servers or whatever, or maybe he hacked directly into the website servers. What he was doing, since he allegedly had access to those things, is that he was making it so that users of his bot were bypassing the queue. These were the rumors. Users of the bot didn't really get in trouble. I mean, why would they? It's not as if they would have known what's going on behind the scenes as to how this all occurred. They were just using the bot as if it was any other bot, as if it was any other bypass. So to the botters, it was perfectly fine, but the bot developer, obviously this way of doing things, literally hacking, very, very illegal and very extreme. We are now at number 16, which is following vendors. So vendors are the people that restock products. And if you are following them around, this is too much. This is weird. Now there is one level above this, which is basically the same thing, but even more extreme, which is attaching tracking devices such as AirTags to the vendor's cars so that the scalpers would know exactly where the vendor is going. They know their routes, they know where the vendor lives, they probably know where the vendor goes out to on the weekends, and they just track that motherfucker. This is way overboard. Don't do this to anyone. Do not attach a tracking device to anybody. At number 18, we have resealing. This is when you open up a factory sealed pack, you take all of the good cards out, replace it with bad cards, and then reseal it again to resell. This is just straight up scamming, and we've been seeing a lot of this in Pokemon, but it's actually been going on for a very long time. What some fraudsters will do is they'll take products like MacBooks or iPads or any expensive electronics, open it up, take out the product inside, maybe put some weights inside, and then they're going to reseal it with shrink wrap so that it looks like it's still factory sealed, and then they would return it back to wherever they got it from. Could be Walmart, Best Buy, wherever. So then effectively the perpetrator gets the item for free, and then when Walmart or Best Buy restocks that same product on their shelves, an unsuspecting customer ends up buying it, someone falls victim to this scam. Or even worse, the perpetrator might sell this sealed item on eBay and list it as, oh, factory sealed iMac or whatever. And someone buys it, they get scammed. Obviously, there's nothing in it except for weights. There's also another variant to this where it's not really resealing, but the idea behind it and the way people use it to scam people is essentially the same thing. Is when people buy real sneakers and then they would return it, but instead of returning it with the real sneakers that they used to purchase, they would return it with the fake sneakers, and this just all gets screwed up because someone else ends up buying it. Or in some extreme cases, some people would buy in bulk a ton of real sneakers, and then maybe they would replace one of the real shoes with a fake shoe in a pair, so there's like one real, one fake inside of a single shoebox, and then they would do that for a bunch of sneakers. That is going way overboard, but I have heard stories of people receiving products like that. Before we get to the last two, here are some honorable mentions. Botting. Although botting is very accessible now, in most cases it requires a lot of initial time and money investment. You got to get the bots, you have to learn how everything works, you have to make accounts, and even in the best case scenario where you have experts in a cook group to teach you how everything works, to hold your hand throughout the entire process, it could still take several days to get your main setup finished, or sometimes even longer depending on your circumstances. Once you do, even then, copying is not guaranteed. Regardless though, a lot of people, including myself, do find it to be worth it because all it takes is just one drop to make all of your money back. But of course, there are risks to it, so if it's something that you're potentially interested in getting into, then I would highly recommend watching my Before You Bot video. It's going to go over all the details of everything that you should know before you get a bot. The second honorable mention is we have taking the entire stock for stores that do not enforce quantity limits, like these guys. I don't think this is extreme in a sense where they're doing hella extra shit just to touch the item. But in my opinion, if there's people waiting in line right behind you who obviously want to get the same thing that you're taking the entire stock of, then you just shouldn't do this. However, although it's really easy to just blame the person, it really comes down to not enforcing some sort of quantity limit. And as I mentioned earlier, I am in favor of quantity limits in store. Because honestly, if I was behind that guy, I might have started taking some products too while he was taking some products. Maybe I would have taken some boxes out of his cart. But of course, everyone clamoring to get these items at the same time is absolute chaos. Compare that to a drop with quantity limits. This ends up being a lot more orderly and the products get evenly distributed better. Just to go on a side tangent, I know a lot of people will be like, oh, if you care so much about quantity limits, then why do you use bots to get as many products as you want? I feel like the ethics for copying online is way different from in-store. And I'll give you an example. So if you ever went for any releases that are limited, one of the most popular release procedures is using a queue method, similar to how Pokemon Center does it, similar to how Walmart does it. And if you're not in the know, typically what happens for a lot of people is they would sit in the queue, and then by the time they get past the queue and they're ready to submit their order, it's already sold out. However, what if you knew how to bypass the queue? Would you then just willingly not use that bypass and just wait in the queue trying to play fair? Would you not use that queue bypass for yourself? I think it would make less sense to not use the queue bypass if you knew how to do it. Now, you can make the argument that bypassing this queue is the same as skipping someone in line. Technically, I guess. The battlefield of online releases is an information and a resources game. If I know a queue bypass and you don't, then I win. If I teach you how to do a queue bypass, then we both win. But if the whole world knows about it, then it turns into a leveled, even playing field. And I'm okay with any of these outcomes, which is why I personally think that collectors that tell other people to stay away from online reselling communities is just them shooting themselves in the foot. Because if you do that, you are depriving yourself of information that can help you secure the products on a more frequent basis because of the information that you receive from people who have been doing this for years. And information is a huge factor in copying online. Now, going back to the quantity limit example, if you wanted to buy more than the intended quantity limit and you know how to do it, then you can try it yourself, but a lot of other people will also know how to do it. And as a result of that competition, it's highly improbable that just one or two people are going to take the entirety of a stock for any single restock. However, when it comes to in-store releases, that is very possible for any stores that do not enforce a quantity limit. And as a result, it can get physical and violent and chaotic and just bad all around. So that's the difference. But anyways, back to the list. At number 19, we have defrauding the poor and the homeless. So there was a story that came out a few years ago, and what they would do is they would take homeless people off the streets, have them go into an Apple store, and then have them purchase expensive electronics on a contract. So if you've ever made a purchase online, they would always give you an option to pay in installments or buy now, pay later. And essentially, you're able to get your products up front for a much lower cost. Instead of paying $2,000 right now, you can make it so that you can pay $2,000 over time. Let's say I go up to a homeless person and I say, hey, I have an opportunity for you. I'm going to give you $100 right now. And you just have to do this one thing for me. If you're struggling, you're hungry, you haven't eaten anything in days, of course you would take that offer. So then I say, okay, I want you to go into that Apple store, I want you to get 3 laptops, and I want you to get it on a contract. So instead of $6,000, let's say this would only cost you like $600. I'm just making up that number because it is on the contract. You give that $600 to the homeless guy, he gets those products for you, you pay him your promised $100. So ultimately, you've walked away with thousands of dollars in electronics and you've only paid $700 for them. But what this does is this completely fucks over the homeless guy. Since he was the one that made the purchase, since the contracts are all under his name, he is now in debt. And there's gonna be no way for them to pay off the remainder of that balance, as if the homeless person wasn't struggling enough, making it even harder for them to get a footing on their life situation. Really, really sad to see, man. So the last thing on this list is just outright killing someone, especially in the sneaker scene. Unfortunately, a lot of stories of people getting killed for their shoes. Back in 2022, there was a sneaker release in Shoe Palace. Person who was working there, his name is Jaron Bradford. He worked at Shoe Palace during a Nike Dunk release. He saw some people having an argument outside of the store, something to do with their raffle entries or whatever. He tried to defuse the situation, and somehow this ended with him getting shot and killed. And it's an absolutely tragic story. Now, this really isn't a tactic. It's just, or I don't know, maybe it could be in the murderer's mind. This is straight up evil. Rest in peace to Jaron Bradford. Regardless of how crazy some of these releases end up being, I really hope this never happens again. That's about it for this video. Like, subscribe, join our free Discord in the description. And if you want to see how I created a target bot that is actually really good and I've been copying quite well with it, you can watch this video next because I also give this bot away for free.